We are going to talk about founding myths today, particularly the Venetian founding myth, my favorite one, involving the crankiest saint, St. Mark, some body theft, an angel, and, unlikely as it is, pork products. Now, the thing to remember about foundational myths is they are usually created after the fact to ensure the legitimacy of the government that is propagating them, and this one is no exception. As the myth goes, St. Mark, one of the big four in the New Testament, is trudging through the Venetian lagoons, the story goes. What he's doing, unclear at this time, but he's trying to get through the lagoon. The lagoon is just a fancy word for swamp, and anyone who has lived near or in or passed through a swamp know that they are of limited charm at times. So St. Mark, not the most chipper of guys, is walking through the Venetian lagoon, and he's having a bit of a hard time of it. Venice, even now, has a bit of a whiff to it because things are decomposing in lagoons and swamps. The heat is said to be wretched and oppressive on this particular day, and St. Mark, an old man with a stick, is trudging through it, and there are flies everywhere, and they're, landing on him and biting, and the whole works. It's just a miserable time, sweat going down his bald head. And after a couple hours of this, St. Mark starts getting really fed up, and according to my favorite version of this myth, he absolutely loses his temper when he steps in mud and it doesn't release his sandal. And he goes digging down into the mud and pulls up his sandal and starts waving about in a berserk sort of fury. And as the legend goes, the clouds part. Time stops. An ethereal radiance fills the air above the Venetian lagoon, and an angel of God appears to St. Mark and says, translated from the Latin, "Peace be upon you, Mark my evangelist. Here you shall rest your body." And St. Mark is apparently, angel-struck by this apparition and rapidly cools down, because when the angel of the Lord apparently tells you to keep it down and chill out a bit, the wise do so. And according to the legend, St. Mark continues trudging, perhaps in a slightly better mood that someone's watching him after all, goes on through his journeys. St. Mark, of course, ends up in Alexandria in Egypt, where he dies, and something purporting to be his body is interred for the next 700 years. So it looks like the angel of the Lord has a very casual sense of causality. Let's put it that way. Now, after that little 700-year interregnum, St. Mark is retrieved and brought to Venice by some enterprising Venetian merchants. I think you'll find in our study of Venetian history that there are very few non-enterprising Venetian merchants. You see, Venice at this time wanted to upgrade its spiritual political arsenal. Up until the 800s AD, Venice's patron saint had been Saint Zachariah, who was a minor saint, and I guess good enough for a little nation-state in the lagoon. But the Venetians wanted to be, bigger hitters on the world stage. And since the saint that you picked as your patron had real political and spiritual cascade effects into how seriously they were taken at the time, they decided that they wanted to upgrade. St. Zacharias is nice and all. What if we had St. Mark, one of the big four? So, these enterprising Venetian merchants walk into what is purported to be the tomb of St. Mark, and in a little bit of linguistic legerdemain, they don't steal the body, they save it from desecration by the ruling Islamic culture of Egypt. Like, oh no, they're going to throw away St. Mark, so we better rescue him instead. It's corpse rescuing, not corpse theft. And the way they do this is they pile the stinking corpse of what is said to be St. Mark. It's actually noted in the text that we could tell he was a saint because of the, quote, holy smell, something unique, sweet smelling. Very interesting. Want to get into that at some point. But the way they avoid detection is they pile the corpse into a casket or cask and then fill it with pork products. The assumption being that since this is a Muslim-controlled area, that the border guards and customs agents aren't going to look too closely at something containing pig products. So the story goes. Well, that little bit of trickery works. They get the corpse into the city of Venice, and they inter it in grand fashion. Now, this may just seem like an interesting bit of trivia, if not for the fact that Venice, in keeping with this, after the early 800s, starts putting the Lion of St. Mark, which is a winged lion, sometimes holding a book or a sword, or sometimes both, everywhere. It's on the flag of Venice, the current symbol of the state of Venice, has a Lion of St. Mark with a Doge's hat on it. They really went overboard putting winged lions everywhere. There's actually a standing order wherever Venetians went. If they could get anything that even looked like a winged lion, to pry it off its plinth and ship it over to Venice. That winged Lion of St. Mark's came to be shorthand for the Republic of Venice and remains so to this day. Gotta say, love foundational myths.